Like Mr. Crouch, Mr. Manklau, Mr. Tagg, um, not only was I born and raised on a farm, my grandfather started that farm back at the turn of the century. My father and uncle continued that farm, and as did I after college. Unfortunately, I suffered a back injury and was unable to continue that. We farmed over 1,200 acres in Batavia, New York, the romantic interlude between Rochester and Buffalo, New York. And a number of my colleagues have actually come to my district from New York City, from the boroughs, and from Long Island to see what it is that farming is all about. I call it up close and personal. I've had Mr. Dundecker from Queens to my district. I've had Mr. Cusick from Staten Island to my district. I've had Mr. Benedetto last year from my district to come up and take a look and see how those of us that live in Western New York and depend on the number one job in this state, agriculture, how it operates. They've been to dairy farms, they've talked to immigrant laborers, they've been to small businesses, and they've seen the long hours that are required to work in agriculture. As Mr. Blankenbush pointed out earlier, if it rains on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there's an old adage where I'm from, and it says, make hay while the sun shines. You are subject to the vagaries of weather when you're involved in agriculture. And so when the sun shines, you may not be making hay, you may be planting, you may be harvesting, you may be picking berries and apples and other assorted agricultural products. Or you may be a dairy farmer who not only has to plant corn and harvest it so that those cattle can eat it, so that they can produce milk for all of us in this state and around the country. What's the deal with the dairy part of agriculture? As has been mentioned already, past several moments, they've been losing $3 per hundredweight of milk for the past 3 years. When you're losing money and you increase the costs of doing business, no matter what that business is, you're in trouble. Because increased costs on a business where you're already losing money means you're losing more money each and every day. This state is dependent upon agriculture, and it's a proud tradition for decade after decade, generation after generation. I was proud to be the third generation in my family. Unfortunately, it's now operated by another farm. But that other farm may not be in business as a result of even this compromised bill that changed it from 40 to 60 hours for mandatory overtime. And even though farm workers cannot strike under the collective bargaining, neither of those things are guaranteed forever, because the wage board, comprised of a Farm Bureau person, Department of Labor, and one other entity, what's the other entity? AFL-CIO. What is it? And the AFL-CIO, there is no guarantee that when they meet on January 1st and hold some hearings, that they aren't going to change what we're talking about today. That would be a travesty because it could go even worse. So I would appeal to everyone. A number of years ago, somebody just walked by my desk and saw this book that I bought over 350 of, and I know I can't use props. It's going down now. It's called Farmhands. It's a book that was written by a gentleman, a newspaper reporter in my district, who worked on 8 different types of farms, so he objectively could experience, write articles, and report on it to the general populace. Many of you hopefully still have that book. It's an objective viewpoint. It's not based on the favoring of agriculture or anything else. He worked on dairy farms, he worked on crop farms, he worked on cabbage farms, he worked on apple and grape farms, the vineyards in Western New York, and he reported on those. And in the front, there's a quote from, quote unquote, Stretch, an apple picker from Jamaica who spends 10 weeks every year at the farm in Western New York. He says it's a tough job, but it's a skill job. You have to maintain your instincts at all times. Yes, you miss your family, but I handle it. I've been doing it a long time. It's a great job, and it's great for my family. I have a number of farms that I've been working with for years in my business, and several of them have already decided, in anticipation and fear that this bill may come to the floor, they've purchased farms in other states. One farm flies each and every week from Oakfield, New York, to the state of Ohio on the west edge of Ohio, and that's where their dairy farm is going to be after this bill passes, unless some of you change your mind, unless some of you that have visited us, unless some of you have actually listened to the realities of what agriculture is. Another business, the number one business in this state of New York, is going to be leaving and already has. So I want you all to think long and hard about what this bill is, this compromise bill, and what it means to the number one industry in this state. We've lost so many folks, not only individuals, but businesses, as a result of the policies that are put in force. Well-meaning, I understand, but these policies are not reality. The reality is that agriculture, the number one industry, will no longer be the agriculture as we know it, and they will be gone. Another industry out of the state of New York. The number one business, agriculture, it'll be the nail in the coffin that puts my grandfather to rolling in his grave. My father and my uncle are rolling in their grave if this bill becomes reality. I urge all of my colleagues to think long and hard about your vote on this bill and the realities of life. Thank you.